Fabrizio, I love that question. Do you know why? Because I would love it to change.
You're the man.
Definitely got a hairdryer or two from Sir Alex Ferguson, and it was horrible.
You know better than anyone else. Hello and welcome to Debatable on 11 Football with me, Fabrizio Romano. As every single week we are talking about the biggest topics in football world with someone from inside game. And this week I'm more than happy, really, to be joined by Watford goalkeeper and great person, Ben Foster. How are you, Ben? The Chickling goalkeeper is with us.
I love it. What an intro, Fabrizio. Thank you, mate. It's a pleasure for me to be here, mate. Honestly, you're an absolute legend, mate. Honestly, thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, really, and congrats for everything you're doing on the pitch, off the pitch, really. I'm a big fan, and so I am really happy to jump into this discussion together, into this conversation, to talk about football, of course, but also about this other side that you are bringing to us with the second goalkeeper. And I want to start with our first statement, as always, here on Debatable, and this: footballers need to stick to playing football. This is our statement. And so what I wanted to ask you, Ben, is you have got two jobs that are quite high on most people's list of dreams, no? This is dreams jobs, because it's really amazing to be goalkeeper into a top club in the Premier League, but also at the same point working on this channel that is really appreciated by people in football. When and why you decided to start with this project with the cycling goalkeeper?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like you say there, I've literally got the dream jobs at the minute. Like you say, football is obviously everybody wants to be a footballer, but a lot of people now call me a YouTuber. It's like they basically refer to me more as the cycling goalkeeper than actually my football. So they'll be like, listen, I love the video at the weekend. It was incredible. They won't even talk about the game or how I did, if I made a good save. They don't mention that anymore. They just mention the video and love it. But do you know what? That almost makes me feel a little bit nicer than if they were talking about football, honestly, because I know that it's something that I really wanted to do in the first place, and I know that I'm making people happy and I'm putting smiles on people's faces, and that's the bit for me that I honestly, I absolutely love it. So the idea initially came in the very first lockdown, where I was just I was at home with the kids, and we were doing so much stuff in the garden, Fabrizio. Like I was doing sort of like assault courses. I was doing like challenges with the kids, like with the football goals, with netball, with my daughter, all sorts of bits and bobs. And I sort of thought maybe I could do something where I could show people what they could do with their kids at home. Loads of football drills, goalkeeping drills, all that kind of stuff. But it never really materialised. But then when we got back to football, I really wanted to show what kind of COVID was like for footballers, because it all changed for us. We got changed in different parts of the building. We weren't allowed to get together in groups. Obviously, the hygiene part of it. And I really wanted to start showing that. So that's where the idea came from. There were no fans in the stadium as well. And that's when the idea of putting the GoPro in the back of the goal in the Championship came to light. And I just thought one day, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to stick it in the goal and see what it looks like. And as soon as I released the first video with that footage, everybody just went, wow. It was such a good reception.
No, it was amazing. And really, the approach is something that is unbelievable. The approach you're having on the video is something so professional also. It's so funny, so enjoyable, but also so professional. So this is why I really love it. And I wanted to ask you, do you believe it is also a benefit to Watford and their fans? Because my answer is yes, but I want your personal opinion on this.
Sure, it's a difficult question, because it's almost got to the point where if we win and I put a video out, it's fine, it's brilliant, it's great. But if I have a bad game or we lose and I put a video, they can look at it as a bit unprofessional, and I should almost like, you should just focus on your football, you should focus on your game. Whereas I know how much effort I have to put into being the cycling goalkeeper with the video in. And honestly, it's not that much. It really isn't that much. You know, on a Friday, I'll start filming and I might only have my camera in my hand for maybe, 10 minutes that day on a Friday, 10 minutes on a Saturday. It really doesn't take that much effort or that long to do it. I just basically show you what it's like being a footballer from my point of view, from my perspective. And because nobody's ever done it before, people are genuinely looking at it, and it's opening people's eyes to see how we travel, what we eat, all that kind of stuff. But again, I do understand, like you say, if we get beaten 3 or 4-0 and I've let a bad goal in, I can understand how people are going to say, listen, you need to focus on your football. I understand it, I really, really do. But my message is that it honestly doesn't take that much time or effort to make these videos that I'm doing.
Sure. And this is part of my question too, because you were touching the point like showing to the people when we travel, how we react and these kind of things. You think should the clubs also more actively encourage more of their players to do this kind of stuff, or you think yours is like an exception and so you don't see it also in other clubs or for other players?
Yeah, I think it's something where you've got to be the right person, you've got to be the right age, you've got to be at the right club, and you've got to be of a certain mentality to be able to do this and want to do it as well. Like I say, there's some players I know for sure that when it comes to match day, Friday, Saturday, they get a little bit insular. They kind of withdraw a little bit from the other players because the pressure of the game starts to build on them, and you can see them genuinely. It does affect them a little bit. And I know that some players aren't able to sort of spin that many plates at one time, if that makes sense. They just want to focus on the football, and I understand that. That's fine. People can do that. For me, I need a release from all of that. I take no notice of the build-up of the game, the pressure of the game, even so much to say that, we arrive at the stadium maybe an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes before kickoff. For about 45 minutes, I will play a game on my phone. I'll play Countdown on my phone or something, which is like a word game, or I will just chat rubbish with somebody because I genuinely pay no attention to the game. It's for me, when the game starts at 3 p.m, that's when you need to focus on the game. That's the bit where you need to give it all your attention. So I work really hard at not wasting any energy, any emotional energy in the build up to the game.
Yes, and this part of social media point of view, many times it happens. We work in football, so we know how is the approach for many players and many clubs. Sometimes feels that some players are not allowed to have an opinion that they can express on social media because maybe they are in top clubs that are not allowing them or are creating problems with this kind of stuff. Why do you think this is happening? And do you think this is going to change maybe in the future with the clubs more open to have the opportunity, for example, what you are doing, to say what you feel after a game or before the game?
Yeah, I do. Fabrizio, I love that question. Do you know why? Because I would love it to change. I really would love it to change because I put a vlog out a few weeks ago. It was after the Arsenal game at Highbury. At the Emirates, and I was talking to Aaron Ramsdale after the game. At the side of the pitch, and I was just talking about how well he's done this season, and people were genuinely like, wow, they've just played a game against each other and they're talking to each other on the pitch. But that happens every single game, Fabrizio. Yes. It does. Every single game, right? Some of our team will know some of their team, and we will go and see them. We'll meet them in the tunnel or near their changing rooms or at the side of the pitch, and we'll have a chat. We'll have a chat about the game. Sure. We'll talk about this or that. And the reason that I think that's important to show that we just go and do those sort of things. It's very normal. It's what human beings do. We just go and talk to our friends and the people we feel comfortable about. So if we played a game against, for example, Arsenal, and I know Aaron Ramsdale like I do, I know people want to hear that conversation. They want to hear what we're talking about. You know, we're not belittling the game. We might have just lost. He might have just lost. It's not about that. It's about hearing the little conversation about what we thought the game went like from our perspective and our point of view, and not having to answer a question that some reporter has put to us in a very sort of stale and clinical way. And that's when you start getting the normal responses of, yeah, we tried really hard, but we just weren't at it today. Yes. Like, that is so boring, isn't it? It's so boring. Like, you don't want to hear that. So when we're on the coach after the game, the way we talk about the game, that's the way people want to hear you talk about it. And I think that's how we need to progress forward. And that's the sort of stuff I want to see after a game from now on.
Yes, and also you mentioned, I love your answer, first point, really. I'm on the same point with you. I think we have to show how the real people and the real person is behind the player, because you're not just a football player, you're a person. And so it's absolutely normal. So I loved your answer, Ben. And I wanted to ask you also, when something tough happens in social media, because many times we see also players having bad experiences on social media. We saw many cases of this kind of stories. I wanted to ask you, if you have an advice for the players, maybe young players that are on social media, they try to show their personality and they have some problem on social media, how to navigate it?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for the young players especially. I think when you're younger, I see it myself. I do, honestly. As soon as the game's finished, I see the young players. They'll get straight on Twitter or Instagram and they are searching their name. They will just search for their name, Fabrizio, and it's crazy because what they're doing is they're trying, it's almost like validation. They want a bit of feedback. Sure. But the feedback that they're searching isn't from the place that they need to be getting the feedback from. They need to be getting the feedback from their coaches, from their teammates, from their parents, from their loved ones, from the people that they trust. These other people on social media that have this portal into this player's life and are able to say things and be horrible in the way they talk to them, that's the sort of thing you should not be listening to one little bit. So even if it's good, even if you've just been man of the match and you've played the best game of your life, do not go on social media and feel good because everybody's saying amazing you are. But then next week have a bad game and then feel bad because everybody's saying how bad you are. You can't do that. You've just got to take everything with a pinch of salt and try and stay on a really level playing. That's how you need to do. Don't get too excited. Don't get too down. But I do tell a lot of the young players, Fabrizio, just stay away from social media when it comes to listening to what they have to say about you as a footballer. I think I think social media has its place, and there's certain things that it's very, very good for sure. But there is a lot of negativity, a lot of jealousy, a lot of hate and poison basically on the internet, and you need to stay away from it.
I agree with you 100%. It also happens to me as a journalist, not just as a football player. Many times people are also criticizing, you know so well how it works, and you have to stay focused on your own things. So I 100% agree with you on this social media point of view. And also Gary Neville a few weeks ago had his own opinion on media companies taking care of social media accounts for the players. Do you agree with him? And do you think he's right when he says that the players, they should have the control of their own accounts? They should post with their own words and not words from people into a company.
Yeah, I completely agree. I find myself agreeing with most things Gary Neville says, to be perfectly honest with you. He talks sense, and with this in particular, I understand why players don't want to do it, because they're very scared of saying something that might get them in trouble.
To feel protected.
Exactly, yeah. It can be taken out of context. It could be taken out of anything. This is why I think videos, for example, just doing a video message or a video Instagram post or something is the way to go forward, because if somebody says it in a certain way, it is what it is. You can tell from the tone in their voice, the way that they say things, that's how they meant it, and it can never ever be taken out of context. But I just worry that some footballers aren't quite clever enough to say it in a certain way, and they might get their words mixed up, and that's what's going to get them in trouble. But for me personally, I would never ever ever consider letting anybody else put a post out on my behalf and explaining what went wrong, or like even the apologies. We've started to see a lot of apologies from especially Manchester United players. That's ridiculous. Like, having to come out and apologise for something that's happened on a pitch is just absolutely ridiculous, because you're not trying to make a mistake. As a goalkeeper, I know I will make a few mistakes a season for sure. That will look really bad. It will make me look like, oh, he's awful. Look at this. But I'll never come out and apologise, okay? Because I know I've trained really hard that week. I did everything I possibly could to get ready for the game. And then in the game, something bad might have happened. But it happens. That's life. That's what happens in life in general. You'll make mistakes and you'll get punished for them. But I wasn't trying to make the mistake. And I think that's the bit that players they almost have to just back themselves and say, you know what? I'm not apologising because I didn't want to make the mistake. I didn't mean to, but it happens, because that's what happens in life.
Yes, this is absolutely something important to say also to young players. This is a really key point, I think, Ben, and thanks for sharing your idea. And before moving on to the next topic, the final question I wanted to ask you about social media and this kind of stuff is, of course, you're a senior player, you're an important player, but you mentioned about staying away from social media comments. Has ever happened to you that sometimes maybe a comment from someone, I don't know if on YouTube or your social media accounts, was affecting your performance on the pitch? Or is something that is never going to happen, that someone can change your performances just commenting or attacking you because of some post or some blog or something like this?
I would say whilst I've been playing for probably the last sort of 5 or 6 years, I've learned to develop I was going to say a thick skin, but it's not even that. I just don't take any notice of it. Like, I really genuinely do not take any notice of it. I know if I've done well, and I know if I've made a mistake, and that's all I need to know. But I would wonder that if I was in my mid-20s and I was one of the really famous players, one of the really big names that would get a lot of traction on social media, I would wonder how I would be able to deal with that, because it's inevitable at that age. You just haven't got the intelligence, the emotional intelligence, to be able to understand that person just wants to kind of release some anger, some angst. Like, it's like they're venting. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like they've waited all week, no football in the week, and then Saturday afternoon comes, boom, this is my opportunity to get all my anger out from all the bad things that are happening in my life. And that player, he is the victim. He's the one that's going to take the full force of it. So I do wonder that if I was in my 20s, would I be able to deal with it as well as I do now? I'm not so sure. This is why I feel really, really sorry for the younger players, and why I try to tell them what to do and to stay away from it, all that kind of stuff. But I got to say, for me personally, at my age, I don't take any notice of it, because I know what I've done, and I'll live with that myself.
Sure. Your control is always important. And before we move, guys, into the next topic, was really fantastic to hear from Ben on his social media and his YouTube channel point of view. Remember, guys, to subscribe to 11 Football on YouTube. And of course, Ben, I ask you, what else should we be doing?
Obviously subscribing to the Cycling GK, without
you
doubt.
know better than anyone else.
Hit that red button below. Hit that red button.
You're the man. So remember, guys, also to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you listen to your podcast. And now we jump into an important statement, because it was amazing to hear from Ben on social media, on the amazing job he's doing on and off the pitch. But now our second statement is about part of your story, Ben, and this Manchester United. Man United will never be able to reach the levels they did under Sir Alex Ferguson. This is our second statement about the legendary era with Ferguson. You played, of course, under Sir Alex Ferguson, and so how has he influenced your career after you left?
Yeah, he, like I say, even though I was at Man United for, I think, 4 or 5 years, and even though it didn't work out for me on the pitch, I still learned so much, Fabrizio, honestly. Some of the people that I used to play football with, Edwin van der Sar, for example, Sir Alex Ferguson, some of the top players in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo, Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, the list goes on. I learned so much about how to start to deal with the pressures of being a big footballer, and then also how to be as a human being as well. So, like I say, it might not have worked out for me on the pitch, but I learned so much about myself that it held me in good stead going forward. And like you said, you was talking about Sir Alex Ferguson there and the effect that he used to have on that team.
Yes.
I honestly just don't think there's ever going to be anybody like Sir Alex Ferguson again. It was like a perfect storm of how to create a machine of a winning football club, because that's what they were. They had the players, they had the right blend of experience, they had the right blend of players who had come through the system, so they genuinely cared about the club. Like I say, I think you're very rarely or ever again going to get anything like that.
Yes, it's really unbelievable what he did. And this is my next question, is about the future, because you said no one is going to be like Sir Alex, but you think would Sir Alex Ferguson management style and methods work also in today's football? And if you remember a moment like behind the scenes of your experience with Ferguson that can explain us who is Ferguson, why Ferguson is so special.
Yeah, I definitely had a hairdryer. I definitely got a hairdryer or two from Sir Alex Ferguson, and it was horrible. It was absolutely brutal. But like I say, at the time when he gave me the hairdryer, it was because at that time Man United were at the top. They were at the very, very top of their game. They were winning Champions Leagues, they were winning Premier Leagues, FA Cups every season without fail. And I think it was probably a frustration thing on his behalf, where he could see I was obviously a decent goalkeeper, but I just didn't have the ability to deal with playing for a team like Manchester United. They were just too big for me. Okay. At that age, I wasn't ready to play for a team like Manchester United. It was just too much. I couldn't compute it all. And I think that's where it came from, the hair dryers. It was just pure frustration, probably. But his management style, I would honestly say, I don't think would be so effective nowadays. I think the modern day player has changed an awful lot, where you need to be almost like a psychologist. Like, you need to have so many attributes to be a real top manager nowadays. You know, you look you look at the top managers, Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp or Antonio Conte, people like that. You have so many amazing talents and skills to be these guys. Obviously the football side of it, the technical, the tactical, all that kind of stuff. But I think psychology is such a big part of being a manager. Your people skills, being personable, how you can get the best out of each player, and you've got to judge every player differently as well. You can't treat one player the same way you would treat another player, because he might not need that. He might need a bit of tough love, and he might need an arm around him. And you've got to be able to differentiate between them two, and then adapt to it as well, and then do it. So yeah, I think the old school type of manager who would be a bit of a shouter and he would just sort of get in your face and say, sort of do it basically, I don't think that works anymore, not in modern football.
This is part of the process, so I think it's going to be important to see what will be the next step for managers. But thank you for sharing your idea on Alex Ferguson, who has been legendary for many and many years. But talking about Man United present now, so the situation right now, they seem to be in a period of transition, so it's not, of course, the best moment for Man United. Do you believe they can be back at top level in few years? How long it will take, and what do they need to be back at top level? So this is my question for you. How do you see current situation at Man United? How long will it take to be back at top level, and what they need?
It's wow. This is the $1 million question, the $1 billion question probably, because I think the problem that Manchester United have got is, if you looked at Man United's starting 11 right now, okay, would any of them players get into the Man City or the Liverpool starting 11? The answer is probably no, okay? That's the problem to start with, okay, is the quality of players. Probably none of them players would get into the Liverpool or Man City starting 11. So that is the biggest problem to start with. But you look at the wage bill of what Manchester United have got, it's probably the same, or if not a little bit higher than Man City's or Liverpool's. So that's just tells you straight away that it's a big problem to start with. But I think probably the biggest problem in football in general is the general standard, the general level of teams nowadays are so much higher than what they used to be. They really, really are. I honestly think, I said it earlier in the season, I think there's probably the two teams that I mentioned, Manchester City and Liverpool, they're about the only two teams that when I play against them, I think, wow, we could get really heavily beaten today. We could lose this 4 or 5-0 easily. Because if Man City or Liverpool are on form and we're playing badly, they will just pop you off the park. They're incredible. And then there's 17 other teams that I think genuinely we can beat these today. We can beat these today. But they would be thinking the same thing. We can beat these today. And so, whereas probably 10, 15 years ago, when Man United were really, really in their pomp, they knew they would only really get tested in probably 3 or 4 matches a season. And the other ones were almost a given. You know, when Manchester United were playing at home, Manchester United won, didn't they? They won, for sure. But now the level is so much higher, I don't think anybody has got a God-given right, not one team, to say we should be winning trophies, we should be winning leagues. It's not that easy anymore.
Yes, and your point is always very good. Also on this Man United, also wages situation, wages structure. This is something important, but many times we see, in my personal opinion, about Man United, that people in the press, in the public opinion, in the social media, are always attacking the manager. The manager is always targeting Man United. So it happened with Ole, it's happening now with Ralph. It's always happening, it's always about the manager at Man United. You think sometimes should the player be taking more responsibility also on the pitch? Because sometimes it seems we change the manager and we're going to resolve the problem. But it's not always the manager the problem, no?
No, it's not. It's definitely not. It's the manager's the easy target. It's always the way. The manager will always be the easy target, especially at Manchester United, because you're always going to be in the shadow. You're always going to be in the shadow of Sir Alex Ferguson. So I don't think it is anybody, unless you go for a Pep Guardiola or a Jurgen Klopp or an Antonio Conte. I genuinely think if they were able to get a manager, one of them 3 managers, you would start to see Manchester United back on top again. Maybe not straight away, maybe take 2 years or 3 years, but that's the only way they're going to get back on top, is by getting one of the real top managers. But like I say,
you like Antonio Conte, Ben? You like Antonio Conte. You always mention him together with Guardiola and Klopp. I'm happy.
Yeah, I like him. I do. He's just the general word in football. Like, as footballers, you're exposed to a few little rumours and this and that. But the general consensus of Antonio Conte is he's one of the top managers. From some of the lads we speak to, have played with him, have been played under him as his manager. They will say he is. Yeah, he's one of the top ones. It's as simple as that. He's one of the top ones. And I think Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, they are top. And if Man United want to be back at the top, they need a top manager. But there's only probably 3 or 4 in world football right now. So where are you going to get one from?
Sure.
What was the original question? I was just going off on one Antonio Conte there. I loved it. I think he's
was
absolutely
about
brilliant.
players. Was about players and their responsibility on the pitch.
Yeah, sure. I think for Manchester United at the minute, the big player for me that's taking responsibility on the pitch is David De Gea. I watch his performance, and this is David De Gea from probably 3 years ago. You know when David De Gea burst on the scene, and he was undoubtedly probably the best goalie in the Premier League 3-4 years ago,
sure.
And that's who we're seeing on the pitch week in, week out. It's just, we need other players to match that level of consistency. It's great getting an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, but then next week they're backing it up with maybe a 4 or 5 or a 0-0 draw or something like that. And you need reliability from players. You need to be churning out these 7s and 8s every single week.
Sure. And you also talking about the history, the badge is still the same when you are contacted by Man United. So, for example, it means as much as playing for Man United also when was your moment a few years ago, or you feel that Man United magic is a bit lost now because of this period of transition?
No, I think Man United will always have a huge appeal. They will. They're Manchester United. They're probably the most famous football club in the world, and they will always have an appeal. Like you said earlier, I think they are going through a bit of a difficult period at the minute, and it's not great when you have an interim manager. I think interim managers in football don't work, full stop. And I really didn't understand the appointment. It's a very strange one, but yeah, Manchester United for sure. They will be back there or thereabouts. Whether they are back as one of the big boys, Man City or Liverpool, I'm not quite so sure just yet, but they will always be there or thereabouts.
I agree with you on this point. I agree with you also because talking with many agents, players and people in football is always magic when you talk about Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, these clubs. Also when they're struggling, you always have the opportunity to have the best players because of the history, the best defense and many factors. But to be back on the final questions on your career, after you left Man United, were you able to enjoy your own football more?
Yes, I was. Exactly that, Fabrizio. But so like I said earlier, when I was at Manchester United, I think I was in like my mid-20s kind of thing. And
yes.
Mentally, I just didn't know how to deal with the stresses and the pressure of playing for this monster team, Manchester United. Honestly, it was like every day I would go into training and I would think, wow, they're going to realise I'm not good enough to play for these. They are going to see me in training and be like, wow, you're not good enough. We need to sell you quickly. We've made a mistake. And that's what I was like for years at Man United, which is crazy because I'm with the England team and all that kind of stuff. But still, in the back of my head, I just kept thinking, you're just not good enough. Like, if you have a bad game on a Saturday, you'll have millions of people shouting bad things at you. And I just wasn't grown up enough. I wasn't mature enough to be able to deal with that. And like I say, it wasn't until I left the club, went and signed for Birmingham, that I could genuinely just sort of, it's almost like you need to get to a point of going, I don't care if I make a mistake. Honestly, sure. You have to get it in your head where you can say, I don't care if I make a mistake because I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm not trying to. So sod it. I'm going to come out for that cross. I'm going to come and sweep up behind players. I might get it wrong now and then, but as long as I do all the prep in training, work hard, watch videos of myself, learn little bits and bobs along the way, then I can hold my head up high and go, yeah, it's fine. So it wasn't until I left Man United that I could genuinely just start to enjoy my football, which is crazy, isn't it? Because can you imagine,
yes.
like, you've got the best job in the world. You're a footballer. You've got the best job in the world. But I was miserable. I didn't enjoy it. It was like going into training. I didn't enjoy it. The games, I hated them, and that's surely the wrong way to live your life, isn't it? So yeah, I can happily say that when I left Manchester United, signed for Birmingham, then went to West Brom, then went to Watford, I've never enjoyed my football so much.
Wow! Fantastic answer. Thank you, Ben. Really. This is strange, but this is how is real life. You know, this is what we said before about social media and about sharing your own opinion, the real opinion. This is why I love it, because there is a person behind the player. It's not a video game, exactly. And this is why sometimes life is different. So, Ben, my last question is, okay, Ben Foster, top goalkeeper, influencer, top on YouTube, doing an incredible job on and off the pitch. What's next for the cycling goalkeeper? So if you can tell us.
So I'm 39 in about 6 weeks' time. Okay, so I'm 39 years old, but I've got to say I still feel really fit. In my head I'm about 22 still. I'm like a big kid. I've got energy to burn. I love going in and playing football every day. Like I say, I've enjoyed football for the last 10 or 12 years. Really enjoyed it, but probably the last 2, 3, 4 years of my life I've never enjoyed it so much. And then obviously starting with the YouTube channel, it kind of feeds into it a little bit as well. So I will honestly try and keep playing football for as long as I can until I get to the point where I feel like my body just can't do it anymore. Whether that's I can't jump as high, I feel like my reactions have gone. When I get to that point, that's when I will probably call it a day. Hopefully it won't be for another 2 or 3 years, but eventually it will come, and that's the point when I will hang my boots up. And I think I'll go into media. I really do. Whether I go into mainstream media or I stay in digital media and do a lot more things on YouTube, podcasts. We've got the Fozcast podcast. I love doing the Fozcast podcast. I love talking to footballers and just trying to understand the human being first and foremost, because like you said there a minute ago about footballers, people just see them as footballers. They're not. Everyone's a human being, and I love to hear the human story from people. So now either way, whatever it is I turn to, I'm sure I'll enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to it too.
And we too, because really, I love this conversation with you. Thank you, Ben, for being our guest today here on Debatable. It was a super pleasure to hear from you, and we wish you all the best. Of course, me as a Watford fan, I wish you all the best on and off the pitch for the cycling goalkeeper and for Ben Foster as Watford goalkeeper. And so thank you again for this conversation, Ben.
No, mate, honestly, it is my pleasure. Fabrizio, you are a legend, mate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to Ben. Guys, you have been listening to and watching, of course, to Debatable on 11 Football. As always, let us know your thoughts on anything we've been speaking about by leaving a comment here on YouTube or review wherever you are looking at your podcast, you're hearing at your podcast. So we wait for you here with a new episode soon. And thanks to Ben Foster. Thank you.